There was a moment when WeWork was worth more than Ford Motor Company. A company that rented office space had become one of the most valuable startups in the world. It didn't invent a new technology. It didn't discover a new energy source. It didn't own the buildings where millions of people worked. It rented desks. So how did investors come to believe that WeWork wasn't a real estate company, but a company that could change the future of humanity? The answer is not just about business. It's about the power of a story. The story begins in New York City after the financial crisis of 2008. The traditional career path was losing its appeal. Freelancers, entrepreneurs, and startups represented a new generation searching for freedom and flexibility. Into this world stepped Adam Neumann. Neumann was not interested in building another boring real estate company. Real estate was about buildings, contracts, and square footage. He wanted something much bigger. He wanted a movement. Together with Miguel McKelvey, he created WeWork, shared workspaces designed for entrepreneurs and startups. On paper, the idea was simple: lease large office buildings, redesign them, and rent smaller spaces to companies and individuals. But Neumann understood something powerful. People don't only buy products, they buy identities. WeWork wasn't just selling an office, it was selling the feeling of being part of something bigger. The spaces looked like luxury hotels. There was modern furniture, free coffee, networking events, and carefully designed communities. A freelancer working alone in an apartment could suddenly feel like they were part of the next Silicon Valley revolution. The product was office space. The experience was belonging, and investors loved it. At the same time, Silicon Valley was changing the way people viewed business. Companies like Uber and Airbnb had convinced investors that almost every traditional industry could be disrupted. The new generation of founders didn't want to build companies. They wanted to transform industries. WeWork fit perfectly into that world. There was only one problem. The business underneath the story was much less revolutionary. WeWork followed a very old model. It signed long-term leases on expensive buildings, invested heavily in renovations, and rented those spaces to customers on shorter contracts. When demand was strong, the model looked brilliant. But when the economy slowed, the problem became obvious. The costs were fixed, the income was uncertain. WeWork had the financial structure of a real estate company, but the valuation of a technology company. For a while, nobody wanted to question that contradiction, because powerful stories change how people see reality. Investors were no longer only looking at revenue and profits. They were looking at a vision of the future. Neumann talked about transforming cities, connecting people, and changing the way humans worked. He wasn't selling office desks, he was selling a dream, and dreams attract money. In 2017, SoftBank entered the picture. Masayoshi Son, the founder of SoftBank, saw Neumann as the type of visionary entrepreneur who could build a global empire. Through SoftBank's Vision Fund, billions of dollars flowed into WeWork. The strategy became simple: grow faster, open more locations, enter more countries. Expansion itself became proof that the company was winning. But rapid growth can create an illusion. When something becomes bigger every year, people assume it is becoming stronger. Sometimes it is only becoming harder to control. Inside WeWork, warning signs began appearing. The company was losing billions of dollars. Corporate decisions raised questions. Neumann maintained unusual influence over the company and even benefited financially from some deals connected to WeWork. The biggest problem was not one single decision. It was that WeWork had become inseparable from its founder. History shows this pattern repeatedly. When a charismatic leader becomes the symbol of a company, criticism becomes harder. Employees hesitate, investors become emotionally attached. Doubts start to feel like negativity instead of reality. Then came 2019. WeWork prepared to go public. This changed everything. During the private investment phase, investors were buying the vision, but an IPO required the company to reveal the numbers. And the numbers told a different story. Massive losses, huge financial obligations, a risky business model, questionable leadership decisions. Suddenly, the same information that had been ignored became impossible to avoid. The story started falling apart. The IPO was canceled. Neumann stepped down. The valuation collapsed from around $47 billion to a fraction of that amount. The company that represented the future of work became a symbol of startup excess. But the most interesting part of the WeWork story is not that investors were wrong. Smart people make wrong decisions all the time. The interesting question is why so many smart people believed the same thing. Because humans naturally trust social proof. When respected investors, successful founders, and influential institutions all believe something, it becomes difficult to disagree. Nobody wants to miss the next Amazon. Nobody wants to be the person who failed to recognize the future, so optimism spreads. Investors copy investors. Employees follow leaders. The media repeats the dominant narrative. The crowd becomes evidence. And eventually, belief starts replacing analysis. WeWork was not unique. The same pattern appeared during the dot-com bubble, the housing crisis, cryptocurrency booms, and countless financial manias throughout history. People confuse momentum with certainty. They assume something rising quickly must continue rising forever. But markets eventually ask the same question. What is this actually worth? In 2023, WeWork filed for bankruptcy protection. The company did not collapse because people believed too little. It collapsed because they believed too much. The offices were real. The customers were real. The experience was often genuinely valuable. The mistake was believing the story was bigger than the business. And that is the lasting lesson of WeWork. The most dangerous ideas are not always obvious lies. Sometimes they are ideas built on something real, amplified by ambition, money, and human psychology, until they become impossible to question. Because when a story becomes more valuable than reality, reality eventually sends the bill.